Oh, okay, it's not working. So again, I want to begin with this piece. He wrote, I asked God for strength, and God gave me difficulties to make me strong. I asked God for wisdom, and God gave me problems to learn to solve. I asked God for prosperity, and God gave me a brain and brawn to work. I asked God for courage, and God gave me dangers to overcome. I asked God for love, and God gave me people to help. I asked God for favors, and God gave me opportunities. I received nothing I wanted. I received everything I needed. And I thought that would be a good beginning to the message today about weathering the storms in our life. So Ernest Holmes was the founder of the Centers for Spiritual Living. And years ago, he wrote that divine guidance is ours for the asking. And that any problem that we could ever see or ever experience in our life, that we had the answers to those problems at the centers of our being. And he said, it's not really enough to know that. Knowing it is good, but that's not enough. What we need to do is to go and expect that we're going to get an answer. To expect from Spirit that they are going to respond to us. So, if you look at what I just read and this, the point of it is that no matter where we are, no matter what appearances we're seeing, no matter what we're experiencing, we're never alone. And if we're willing to dig deep enough, we can find an answer or a gift or a blessing in that experience. So Erwin Kula is a rabbi. Some of you may have seen, if you ever watch Oprah's show, he's been on Oprah a couple of times. And in one of his books, he said that sometimes when he goes and he's giving a talk to an audience, and I've actually done this before here, but we're not going to do it today. He asks people to raise their hand and give him what their answers are to the word holy, what they think the word holy means. And you can imagine he gets all different kinds of answers, like pious, serene, complete, untouchable, and just a whole host of answers. And he said, yet holiness is available to each and every one of us every day, no matter where we are and no matter what we're doing. But so often we miss it because it can be really subtle and it could be lost in the routine of our day. And so he tells a story about he and his wife were out to dinner with some friends one night, and his wife is pregnant. And sometime during the course of the dinner, she says to him, "It's my time." And so they get up, and the hospital is 5 blocks away. So they walk to the hospital together, and he says 5 hours later, she gives birth to the perfect baby. And any of you that have been dads, all the babies you have are perfect. And so he's absolutely ecstatic. And then he says he gets this thought that totally knocks the wind out of him. And the thought was, about a year ago, his wife, his name is Dana, had a miscarriage. And he said, if Dana hadn't had that miscarriage, Talia, his little daughter, would never have been born. And he said, in that instance, he was filled at the same time with sadness and with peace. And he was filled with the terror of that memory and gratitude for the moment he was experiencing right then. And he said he could see how both the good and the bad are knitted into the fabric of all of our lives. And sometimes they're right there together. And it just, it made me think of during the hurricane, I was watching one of the channels one day, and the weather forecast, you know how they try to scare you and stuff, and this particular weather forecaster, he said, it was during the day, you know, when it was raining and stuff, and he said, this is all gonna be over by 5:30 tonight, and then go out and look, because you're gonna be able to see a gorgeous sunset. And I thought, when was the last time I heard a weather forecaster say that in the middle of the hurricane? But again, for me, it kind of brought home that even in that, we can look for beauty, and we can know it's coming. So Wayne Dyer, I'm sure a lot of you have read Wayne Dyer's stuff, and in one of his books, he tells a story. One of his friends was talking to Mother Teresa, and he said to Mother Teresa, how can I help you? And she said, you want to know how to help me? Tomorrow, get up at 4 a.m. and go into Phoenix. I guess he lived in Arizona. Go into Phoenix and walk the streets of Phoenix and find somebody who believes that they're all alone, and then convince them that they're not. And he quoted the Indian poet Tagore, who said, faith is the bird who sings when the dawn is still dark. And the point of it is that it's knowing that in any moment of darkness that we might be experiencing, that the light is on the way. And we can have faith that no matter what is going on in our life, we're not going through it alone. And then it's kind of a little detour, but Wayne Dyer gives an example I really like. He said, imagine seeing a junkyard, okay? A junkyard, and there's 1 million pieces of junk in this junkyard. There's all kinds of, an Air Force guy, you're gonna get this. There's all kinds of nuts and bolts and scrap metal and iron and toilet bowls and glass and seats and all kinds of stuff you can imagine. And he said, and then just imagine this unbelievable wind comes and all of this junk flies up into the air, and it's banging into each other and hitting into each other and circling and flying all around. And he said, and then just as quickly as all of this happened, it all ends. And you look, and standing where there was all of this junk is a beautiful Boeing 747 ready to be flown. And he said, that's ridiculous, isn't it? It's absolutely ridiculous. But on another level, isn't it ridiculous to think that everything we see and everything we experience here was one gigantic cosmic accident, rather than one mind who created all of this? And if we believe that, then we know that we're never alone. So I read a blog by a lady named Allison Miller this week, and she wrote she had always wanted to fly. And so at some point in her life, she decided to go to a circus and take lessons on becoming an aerial acrobatics person. So she goes to this circus and she takes lessons in how to do this. And one day when she's practicing this, she falls 15 feet. And she shattered both of her wrists, a vertebrae in her back, and broke her foot. And she's in the hospital, and it's a whole new experience for her because she can't do anything for herself. She can't even go to the bathroom by herself. And she's hurting, and she's angry, and she's being a general pain in the hospital. And one of her friends comes to visit. And her friend says to her, "Wow, this is a really hard gift to receive, isn't it?" And she said, "If I had been a cat then, I would have spit a fur ball at him." But what it did, when he left, it made her start to think, wait a minute, why not turn this into some kind of gift? So she said every morning when she would get up, she would ask herself, instead of being angry, she would ask herself, how can I turn this into a gift? And so she moved mentally from a place of resistance to a place of acceptance. And she said, when you're in resistance, your vision gets blinded, so you can't even find a way out of it. And so she said, what did I learn from this? And she said, what I learned is to turn a challenge into a gift. And to do that, you need to acknowledge it. You need to look at the value that it's bringing into your life. And you can ask yourself questions like, what are you here to teach me? What are you here to teach me? What am I here to learn? Show me. And so, this morning, I actually hadn't planned to talk about this because it just happened to us. We're gonna have this cake for Steve and Craig. And I was telling them, when we went to pick it up today, it wasn't there. They forgot the order, they forgot to do it. And they said to us, if they could have been more apologetic. And they said, if you come back in a half hour, we'll have the cake, and we won't even charge you for it, we'll give it to you. And the young lady that made so on the way out, Becky turned to me and she said, so what's the gift in this situation? And what the gift was for us, the young lady that made the mistake was incredibly hard on herself. She kept, almost like a mantra, she kept saying, I'm so stupid. I'm so stupid. And I mean over and over. And we just took her aside and talked to her about how everybody makes mistakes. And Kelly, you can't do this to yourself. And the gift to us was, we maybe showed somebody a different way that they could look at themselves and not be so cruel and so harsh and putting each other down. So I said to Becky and to Jenna this week, I wonder if people in here, in this hurricane situation, saw a blessing in their life that could come out of it. And as soon as I asked them, both of them said, oh yeah, I know one, so I decided to call on them, and then I'll give anybody else that wants an opportunity to tell us. So you wanna talk about?
Yeah, I live in a condo complex, and I never see any of my neighbors, and so I don't really know. I mean, every once in a while I see a face, or we wave to each other. But because of the hurricane, we were all together as a group talking, who's doing what, who's doing this, and oh, I didn't know you were single. Oh, now that I know that you're alone, let me get your phone number. I'll call in and check on you. And
all guys, by the way.
No. And then one guy, and I said, look, if you're I'm not gonna evacuate, but if you're gonna evacuate, they all encouraged me to stay and not evacuate. I live on Cocoa Beach. And I said, well, if you change your mind, knock on my window and let me know. And this one guy knocked on my window at 6:30 in the morning. Unfortunately, I was up, my light was on, and he says, oh, my family wants me to evacuate, but I'd given Ginger next door the keys to my apartment, or my condo, and there's extra water up there, and if it starts flooding, you guys can go upstairs into my place and stay dry. And it was just a nice sense of camaraderie, and it was just really lovely.
Thank you. You were done?
I'm done.
What we experienced during the hurricane, we got a lot of calls from our friends in California and Arizona and who wanted to make sure that we were okay. And also, we had 3 people here who invited us to come and stay with them because they knew that we didn't have a garage and we were concerned about our convertible. And so that was the gift, is just seeing the love and the caring of people.
Anybody else want to share? Anybody have, oh, okay.
Yeah, my beautiful gift was actually my husband, because I was in India, so when I came back, I landed, so this was like 2 weeks that I was in India, and on my return, he told me there was a hurricane, so, and I was really worried, like with plane landing and stuff like that, and I wasn't able to do much with the house to prep, and I'm German, so I don't know even what to do. So that is not a case there. There's no hurricanes in Germany, so, but he took care of everything, and on the road, on the way out, he picked me up from the airport and we evacuated. And the beautiful thing was, I was talking to because we didn't know where to go, so we drove up to Tallahassee. Well, all the FEMA workers, they were there too. So we got the last hotel, which was beautiful, and then I was talking to my friend, just normally I check in with people how they're doing, and she said, well, come on up to South Carolina and stay with us. And so
Good advice.
he drove another 7 hours to South Carolina, and this is my group that meets in India. So all of my friends that I only get to see once a year, they came and met me over there in South Carolina, and we had a beautiful meditation round together, and I didn't have leave from work, so I got extra leave to doing that. So it was beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to tell you a fable about a blessing in a situation. And it's a fable that happened on the Isle of St. John, which is in Florida. And it's about a married couple named Ronaldo and Beccamundo. And Ronaldo and Beccamundo were at the chariot races one day, and when they came home, their air conditioning didn't work. And it was very, very hot. So they called up the kindly owner of the inn where they were staying, and he, being a very wonderful and generous person, said, pick any hotel you want to go to, and I will pick up the bill for the night. Well, Ronaldo thought that was really great, and Ronaldo went and looked up and found the hotel and the price and was really excited. And when he told Beccamundo, she said, I don't want to go. I want to stay here. And so they stayed there. And they didn't sleep all night because of the heat. And that's kind of the end of the fable, except you might say, what's the blessing in that? And the blessing in that was, for the rest of their marriage, Ronaldo was able to say to Beccamundo, I told you so, I told you so. And what greater blessing could there be for a husband than that? I will hear about that on the drive home. So, one of my friends posted this on Facebook. You either get bitter, or you get better. It's that simple. You either take what has been dealt to you and allow it to make you a better person, or you allow it to tear you down. The choice does not belong to fate. It belongs to you. So Mary Morrissey is a minister who used to have a huge church in Oregon, and then she gave it up. And in one of the books we have by her, she talks in that book that She and her second husband bought a house, and it was the first house that she ever owned when she was 45 years old. And she was really excited, because prior to that, they lived in an apartment or they lived on a farm that her then husband's parents owned. So she never felt she had anything that was really hers. And she was so excited to move into this place, and it was on a hill and had a fabulous view. And she said one morning, it's raining, all night it rained and it's raining, and her husband goes out to get the newspaper, and when he comes back, he's ashen. And she said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "The police are here. Our next door neighbors have to evacuate because they think their house is gonna slide down the hill, and they think ours might too. We need to get out of here." And she said, "When?" And he said, "Get dressed right now." So they do. And Mary, when the police leave, she decides to come back to get some valuables. And she said she's walking through the house, and it's really quiet because nobody else is around, and it's pitch dark, and she goes in to all the rooms, and she's looking at it, and then she said at some point she remembers these words from the Bible, from Matthew, and the words are, "And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and burst against the house, and yet it did not fall, for it had been founded upon rock." And she said what it did for her was she realized that her safety and everything else associated wasn't built on the house, that it was built on her relationship with God. And she said, so we get this choice when life hurts. Do we settle? Do we blame God? Or do we look within and see how resilient you are? And it made me think, remember Christopher Reeve, Superman, and the terrible accident he had? Well, I read years ago when he first was hurt, he asked his wife to help him commit suicide because he couldn't imagine living a life the way he was going to be. And she said, "Chris, whatever you do, don't let this one thing define you." So Mary had a practice in her book I thought was really interesting, and I thought I'd read a little bit of it because I just really liked it. And the idea of the practice is to make the decision that pick a day in your life and spend that whole day with God. And she talks about, she said, it's just between the two of you. And so walk through your day and ask God in everything you do for help. And she said, at some point during the day, you're going to take a shower. And she said, so bathing is kind of like a baptism. And, it's not just to physically clean yourself, but think of it as part of your spiritual practice, that as you're cleaning your whole body to wash your hands and think about the way you touch other people. And she said, and this one really got to me because I'm a really fast eater. She said, think of having dinner with God. Think of having a meal with God. What would that be like to have a meal in the presence of God? And she said, you're less likely, I thought this is really true, you'd probably be less likely to turn on the TV, if you're having a meal with God, and you're less likely to excuse yourself to take a phone call. You'd really, really be present with it. And she said, so just think one day with God and give yourself the ability, and then have another and another and another. And it reminded me when I was in the School of Ministry, I had this fabulous teacher who told us one day, she said, you know, a lot of you are gonna go through this mental process that we call the Parade of Sundays. And what the Parade of Sundays is, it's like when you let your mind wander and go ahead and you think to yourself, here I am, I'm a minister, and I've got to write 52 talks this year, or 48, whatever. How am I ever gonna do that? I don't have enough to say, you know, to write all of those talks. And you start to get really, really stressed. And that happened to me. I was assistant minister at a church, and I would do a Wednesday night service, and I'd prepare to talk on Monday. And every Sunday, I would literally start to get sick. I mean, literally, I'd start to think, oh my God, I have to write a talk tomorrow. What if nothing comes? What am I gonna do? Am I gonna get up there Wednesday and I'm gonna say, oh, nothing came, I don't have anything to say. And I know it sounds really funny, but it's really scary. And then I read an article by a fellow named Cardinal Berardine. I think he was from Chicago. And he was on the fast track in the Catholic Church. And he was promoted to the Vatican. And when he got to the Vatican, kind of went to his head, I guess, and he got really fat, and he lost his spiritual practice, and nothing worked. And he decided one day, this isn't why I became a priest, this isn't what I want. So they sent him back to, he requested they send him back, and he became the Bishop of Chicago. And what he wrote was, he would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning every day and spend 2 hours reading and meditating and communing with Spirit. And he said, some days it didn't work so good. And anybody that meditates knows some days you have really great meditations, and some days it's like, why am I sitting here? And he said, but it didn't matter to him, because those were his 2 hours every day with God. And that changed my whole thing from the Parade of Sundays, because what I got out of that was every Monday, and now I do it a different day, but every Monday I got to meditate, I got to pray, I got to read, and that was my day to spend my entire day with God. And out of the meditating and out of the praying and out of the reading came a talk. And it was a whole different mental process than saying, oh my God, I gotta write a talk. Now, I've been a minister 21 years and I never had to get up on a Sunday and say nothing came. I felt like, boy, this is not a good one, but I never thought that nothing came. So I want to end with something from Rachel Remen, who I've talked about before. She's an MD, and she works with people in Northern California that have terminal or really serious diseases. Well, in one of her books, she tells a story of, she was at a physician's seminar, a listening seminar, a physician's listening seminar. And one of the things that they did, they all had their stethoscopes and they listened to their own hearts. And she said that most of them were really deeply moved because it's something they hadn't done in years and years, to take the time. You know, they listened to everybody else's, but they didn't take the time to listen to their own heart. And she said they were moved because it was so far out of what their normal day was like. And I guess they talked about it later, and they said they knew that they had the honor every day of working with life itself. And one of them, there was this deep silence. And then one of them got up and he said, how could we be so close to something and to not know it? And he asked them if they could end with a prayer. And this is the prayer he ended with, and the prayer I'll end with today. It's a Hebrew prayer. Days pass and the years vanish, and we walk sightless among miracles. Lord, fill our eyes with seeing and our minds with knowing. Let there be moments when your presence, like lightning, illumines the darkness in which we walk. Help us to see, wherever we gaze, that the bush burns unconsumed, and we, clay touched by God, will reach out and exclaim in wonder, how filled with awe is this place, and we did not know. God bless you. Thank you for being here, and have a great week.